Dr. Murray Forman, my friend, my man, my mellow. How are you, sir?
Peace. I'm doing great, man. Thanks, Manny, for having me on. Much respect and really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you, as you know. I appreciate that appreciation. I appreciate you putting up with this madness. We are, less than 2 months into doing it live every Monday with all the trials and tribulations that can happen. I still say it's the most enlightening hip hop live stream in all the world. So it's good that it's working out. It's good that you're here, and I appreciate you coming on. So, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Everything's level. Just keeping it moving, right?
Yeah, indeed. Well, that's what we got to do. Keep on plugging. I mentioned this book, and I know that you've done 1,000 things more than this book, right? So I don't want to keep it like this is the only thing you've done, and this is your grand opus. Although it's a hell of a. I tell people I can only read it like 2 or 3 times a week. I really can't get to it any more than that. I apologize.
You're slacking, man. You're slacking.
Cover to cover, like 2 or 3 times a week. But I got kids. Like there's a lot going on, man.
Get those kids reading it too, and gift it to your mom and whoever else.
Absolutely. Baby Girl Faces is about halfway through. She keeps getting distracted by YouTube. So what can I do? That being said, tell me and tell them why I hold this book in such high regard. And I know this is a little bit of, you're gonna have to be bigging yourself up, let's just say. But that's the joint's been around. This is now the 3rd edition, so it's been around for some time. It is an incredible compendium of essays and chapters written by some of the leading voices of hip hop, academia or studies. Tell me how this book came together, why it's so important, what's been your involvement for, just the long and short of it, if you could.
Yeah, sure, man. 2 decades ago, and it sounds like a long time. Time moves fast, but Mark Anthony Neal and I, he's at Duke University, of course. Himself an amazing black culture scholar, not just hip hop. And in conversation, we wondered, what's out there? What could we use in our classrooms to bring hip hop knowledge? The so-called 5th element into the classroom, keeping it real to hip hop, and also keeping it rigorous for academia, right? And so we sort of, got together and sort of said, what would our wish list be? What would the greatest hits or mixtape be that we would want in our practice and bring into the classroom and to make available for other people? And so that's what we did. We pulled it together. And that was 2004, first edition.
Oh, hold on 1 second. I may have muted you, brother. Hang on. I may have muted.
Am I back here?
Yeah, I was trying to lift your volume up a little bit. I don't know if you have a way to speak a little bit closer. Just wanted to, bring that up. People were having a little trouble hearing you. I was trying to boost you up, and then I muted you, which is just how things work around here.
You're not the first.
They're always muting me, Manny.
So, and one of the things, I guess the 2 things that we're most proud of is that, we got out there first. There's been a lot of like guidebooks, companion books, other textbooks that have come out, and they're all really good, but, there is something about being first and firstness with these things. And when we got out a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of the academic formation of what we decided to call hip hop studies, we said, let's give it a name and let's formalize it. And let's make it more difficult for universities who would probably love to suppress this. But let's make it more difficult for them to do that by giving it all the kind of the structure and infrastructure that other areas of study have. And then the other thing is it's been really, really, really surprising, but also rewarding, is that over these 20 years, I've had students say this book really helped them in their graduate studies, helped them work through their academic issues, or gave them a toolkit, And I look at it as like a relay where, we kind of constructed something that resembles the baton, and we hand it off and let them run their damn race and over the line, and that's been really rewarding.
Yeah. Let me ask. So, okay. I never know who's listening. I know we got some like friends and fans right now, of your work, of even, the stuff that we talk about here in the regular. I feel like sometimes we preach to the choir. People know who you are and they know what you did, and we don't have to but also sometimes lay folk wander in and they might say, okay, how do you define hip hop studies then? Like, what is that? And obviously it seems like a simple thing if you don't really know, like if you're not familiar with the culture and but then if you are familiar with it, then it's a vast thing. So how is it like both of those things at the same time? And how do you kind of put it into a box, something that is really hard to put in a box?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. And it's been a bit of a dilemma, man, because when you think about, other kinds of academic disciplines or sub-disciplines in fields and that sort of thing,
Yep.
they often have like a formal methodology. And, this is our history. This is our formation. These are our major approaches. This is the canon of esteemed works and authors. Hip hop didn't have any of that. And I'm not sure it does. And so that becomes a bit of a dilemma. It's like, how do we define this thing called hip hop studies without that kind of box of formal approaches? On the other hand, that might be one of its virtues, right? In the same way, hip hop, as soon as you start getting it too formalized and structured, you lose the groove, you lose the funk. And so what I've liked is the way we call it hip hop studies, but then other fields, other disciplines with their approaches, they bring their fire and their formal approaches to this thing called hip hop. And ideally, they bring a hip hop sensibility to the field. So they kind of open up the field in the same way that hip hop gets opened up by whatever it is they're approaching it with.
Interesting. So offshoots, as you say. So
yeah. Because it's been really useful and places fields like sociology and media studies and African American Africana studies. Those are kind of natural and easy ones. Then when it starts showing up like economics and business and finance and these other places that in sports and leisure studies and all these other places, it doesn't really there's not a clear kind of box anymore, and that to me is, I think, exciting, and I think it keeps it kind of in a hip hop sensibility. Keeps it kind of loose.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges for folks, maybe folks like y'all, in the firmly footed in the academics, world. Folks like me that are kind of journalism, and I touch my toe in the academic world. But the work is to, and we hate that we have to do this, but we have to kind of convince X group, Y group of the validity of hip hop as something worthy of being studied in schools and higher education, being worthy of incorporating into your, like you said, any field. My mantra has been any field of discipline across the board can benefit from having somebody with a hip hop sensibility, hip hop ethos involved in it, whether it's business, whether it's advertising, as we know, whether it's, like you say, sports and leisure, whether it's plumbing. I don't care. You want to advertise your plumbing business any better? Like, there's no better guerrilla marketing, folk than hip hop folk. Like we invented guerrilla marketing in a modern age. So
I think hip hop plumbing, we're gonna keep you flowing.
There you go. You got a hashtag and everything. So that's what I'm saying. Like, one time from her. Let me give you one of these because you get one of these. So the work is to convince people. Now, we hate that we have to do it. We know that we have to do it. There's this long, ongoing struggle of, do we need validation? Does hip hop need validation? Specifically, the black artists, the black musicians that, sort of like where that's come from, because it's like, we have our own thing, they say. The ivory towers don't want to accept it. Who cares? They never did. We went around the back door. We changed the music industry. But we also know that validation is important. It gives us resources. It gives us things to, tell me how y'all, dealt with sort of that struggle of, or continuously deal with that struggle of balancing that with the need for validation, but also validation.
Well, when we came in, I think you're nailing it, man, because, hip hop was not welcome. I mean, this is the same sort of continuum of people who at various stages said, studying comic books or studying television or studying popular music, and subcultures, it's like it doesn't belong in the higher education. So those same sort of orthodox and traditional conservative voices were present around, the idea of hip hop. And we hit those barriers, we hit those walls. My line, and I stated in the introduction to the first edition, is like, we have to, reading, writing, and research is hip hop too. So let's first of all not make it like it's a separate thing, but we also have to remain rigorous. If we're going to fit into this thing called academia, people are already suspicious and already kind of skeptical and haters, then you better bring your best work. Make sure that it stands up to the academic thing. And I think that, in retrospect, but I adhere to it today, that's important to the academia, but it's also to do justice to hip hop.
Right.
If you come in without the rigor in either case, you're falling short and you're doing disservice to both, right?
Right.
So, we ran into those barriers, but one of the interesting things that I hadn't foreseen it, is that as hip hop became more popular, became more mainstream, as hip hop studies became more established, that notion of validation or legitimacy started to fall away. And the other side of it is that we saw, academic colleges and administrators saying, "Oh shit, hip hop puts butts in seats." In other words, this has a kind of an academic chic. It's kind of cool.
Right.
And if butts and seats, can be translated into money and, in the university accounts, then we want to offer hip hop courses. And so then we get into that, culture vulture appropriation model, right? And they'll say, like, you got people who are, not to diss anybody necessarily, but, in English departments who really aren't into hip hop, but they want to use hip hop lyrics to try and teach Shakespeare or something.
Right.
But they got no commitment to the culture. They got no commitment to the history and to the formation and what it means to be stepping in and trying to do this as hip hop, right? And so that, that's we wanted something, we wished for it, we got a little bit of it, and then we said, oh shit, we hadn't seen this.
Right. So the college, like you said, they want to get butts and seats, so they say, "Hey, you teach the hip hop class," right? And they're not reaching outside of necessarily the walls and finding maybe someone who might be more qualified as part of the culture, a teacher practitioner kind of deal. But it's like, and so now I think some of the work has been to also say to the academic side, like, hey, you have to maybe sometimes look outside of just the traditional. I've talked about this. I don't have a degree. I'm the son of a college professor, distinguished professor of sociology, brilliant guy. One of the best college professors that ever walked the earth. And of course I didn't go to college. Why would I? That's a shoemaker's son has no shoes, right? So I said, but because I'm a practitioner, I'm a student, I'm an independent scholar of the culture, I'm just speaking personally, feel like I'm no less qualified to teach, a hip hop course in any college. But I couldn't get past the AI, whatever the thing that reads the resumes and the CVs as it gets through, because I don't have an a true degree. But forget me. I'm talking about, people have been practitioners for 40 years that have all of that background and knowledge and experience that are infinitely better to teach this maybe they could use a little instruction on instructing, right? Teach the teacher how to teach, but they're super qualified. And that's what we need more from our educational institutions, is to realize that they need to do more of that. I think we're seeing more of that these days. But I think that's part of the work too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, let's think about it. It's like, hip hop identified cats who are working in the elements, whatever their art form might be. What are they experts at? And one thing is moving the fucking crowd, right? And bringing the vibe and generating that energy, right? And a kind of, a shared affect.
Right.
And so, the classroom actually misses something if you don't bring that and make that part of the curriculum. So, I'm thinking about my collaborator and colleague and friend, Mark Anthony Neal, who built a course at Duke University with Ninth Wonder.
Right.
And looking at soul music and sampling and, these sort of things. And up here I'm in Northeastern, by the way, not in Northwestern. I'm up in Boston.
Did I say Northwestern?
Yeah.
Whatever. All same thing.
Also a great university. But up here, like I've tried bringing on Harry Allen, Martha Diaz, F. Poe, Akua Naru, Ed O.G., local hero. He comes in every year, and then just over at UMass Boston, local hero acrobatic teaches a course, right? And so a lot, and down in South Carolina, Jabari Evans, who used to be in Kids in the Hall, MC Knowledge. All these cats are getting their degrees as well. And so, what used to be this kind of town and gown separation isn't nearly as rigid as it used to be. And this is, I think it's a great thing for hip hop. It's absolutely a great thing for hip hop studies,
Right.
Like, people like me who don't have any necessarily skills in the elements. I tried them all. But, but writing is, like I say, research is also can be hip hop if you bring the cultural sensibility.
Right.
And so, we're finding people now from all those different dimensions, some of them coming into their, what I call second acts, as they get a little older and they realize, I've sort of peaked or whatever. My hip hop career is it's not going to make money for the family, but I can teach, adjunct. I can teach courses, and I can keep it just as hip hop in the classroom as I do out anywhere else.
Yeah. The more of that, the better. I mean, obviously that's the type of folks I talk to here. Master Ace comes to mind, who obviously still makes music and still makes albums, but has written a play, and he's developing a play with the Rhymes Over Beats folk in New York. And they're what do you call it? When you try out a play, you try it out, you develop it, whatever. He's been running that for a little while, and we see, and you just mentioned a bunch of other names that, I've caught a little flack for this when I said that hip hop, in a way, part of the pushback that the culture gets from its fans and participants who've grown up with it, and we see how like the music goes in a direction that we may not necessarily appreciate or enjoy. And I often say, like, look, hip hop is so much more than the music, which we all know, but it's desperately trying to outgrow just being the music. Like we trap it sometimes by not saying, look at all the great stuff that our artists can do that isn't being, music on the radio or on Vivo or on, and we hold it back a little bit by not understanding how much that is and can happen. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And, and I also think, I mean, I one of the work I'm doing right now is on, frankly, it's on growing old in the game,
Right.
age and aging in hip hop.
Right.
And I'm writing a lot about the pioneers, the longtime veterans and that sort of thing. And one of the things that really is, to their benefit, but it's to everybody's benefit, really, is that they've been around long. Right. And they're beyond reproach in terms of their hip hop bona fides, like they did the work, they created the thing, they brought it, but they've been around so long that they're really comfortable in front of all kinds of audiences. Right. They're invited to conferences, to lectures, to public talks all the time. And so these guys get in front of an educational context, and they know exactly what to do.
Right.
And so there's this is one of the things I'm really encouraged by, is that, with enough experience, these guys they become like, the carriers of the culture, and they may as well just come into the classroom. So I think it's incumbent on us in the university to make sure that we keep those doors open, invite them to guest lectures, invite them to talks, just make sure that whatever that old traditional town and gown, purist and tourist kind of division,
Right.
Is eroded. Break that down and make sure that they feel as comfortable in the classroom as any place else.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, older folks that are outside of, that are part of the culture, lament that the young folk don't respect the elders or don't have any, comprehension of the elements. Well, if we don't have places to deliver that to them. And again, they are in college, they are going to school. That's a great place to be able to reinforce and pass on those traditions, and in a way that isn't always, super, authoritative, right? It's because I know that hip hop classes and hip hop instructors are much more sensitive to the restrictions of a traditional education system that don't value the cultural, language of their students. And they sit in ciphers. We know where you're coming from. We're happy to talk about these things. So it makes it a welcoming learning experience for young folk. And then you bring in the OGs to come connect those dots and build those bridges. It's set up perfectly for it.
Yeah. And one of the things, I mean, I'm kind of guilty as charged, it's like with age, it's harder to keep up on what's going on,
Right.
I know there was a period where, we all had like the source. We had, all kinds of media, feeds and stuff. We kind of were on top of what was going on. You knew when something new was happening. You knew who was hot, who was falling off. All of these things. We all kind of knew it. I felt like that was part of the hip hop nation. We were connected to something.
Right.
Well, it's not like that anymore. And so I think one of the first things I do is I tell my students, I can work with you, and I can bring the history, and I can try and bring in some of these people. And, if I can't get them in on a Zoom, I interviewed Chuck or Kaz or Theodore or something.
Right.
I'll play a clip from the interview tape, so they hear it in their voices. Right. But then there's a point where I say, I got to give it to you guys now. I got to defer and say, I can't, I've given you the framework for the formation of the culture. Now, how do you guys want to discuss what you're listening to and what you see as the culture, and how do you want to kind of, explain it in a way that we're saying, okay, this is what hip hop is now.
Right. As we've talked about offline, to me, that's super important, because we can't define, again, I said it earlier today, it's we can't continuously define, as older folk, as older hip hop heads, as older academics, we can't define something that's not definable, that's supposed to evolve, that has always evolved and had offshoots and branches that we were aware of and could kind of, you know, you want to talk about what you don't like today. New Yorkers didn't recognize down South hip hop as being important in our time, you know, so
the South got something to say.
Yeah, and the South then had something to say about it. So we've always had those distinctions. So it is super important, as you say, to continuously, it's got to be a two-way street. We've got to learn from the young folk as well as give them the opportunity, you know, to learn from us as well.
And I'm going to, you know, just a little self-promotion, but it works within the conversation. That,
yes.
You know, this is...
You mean this?
That's the one, bro.
I was going to segue too, but feel free to just segue away.
Well, you know, when we're talking about this, and you know, the history, and you know, I can explain. You know, I can be anecdotal. I can bring in these older cats who are also going to often be anecdotal and that sort of thing. But the material artifacts, the physical objects, documents, all of that sort of thing, the historical record is now thankfully being, you know, placed into archives, and it's, you know, at their best, they're community accessible and responsive. And I think this is the other things now is trying to work it into curriculum, you know, that you get the students now, you know, to do this project, you need to access the archive.
Right.
You know, it's, you know, often they're if they're good ones, they're, you know, they have the funding and stuff, they're digitized. So go in and do something on Joe Conzo's photographs, or you know, on you know, the tapes of radio programs from Toronto from the, you know, early 1990s or whatever it might be, you know.
Right. Tell me about, and the segue to that was, okay, we talk about, you know, writing, and we're talking about classes and instruction. The archives was the thing I was definitely going to segue into, and you did nicely with the book Hip Hop Archives. Of course, we know a lot of folks that are doing hip hop archival work. It's still a burgeoning, but it's a blossoming field. The importance of that. What are some of the things that in writing the book or just in your travels you've seen as sort of I want to say like prime examples of hip hop archiving? Who's done it right? Who's doing it right? What needs to still be done? Obviously, we've talked on this show a long while ago to Ben Ortiz, and you know, I've talked, of course, you know, with Martha Diaz, Sommer McCoy, who runs the Mixtape Museum and is working on some of these initiatives. But overall, like, what have you seen, generally speaking, that I think we don't have to, I hope we don't have to the audience who's watching this show, explain why archiving, you know, these cultural artifacts is important, but who's doing it right? What's the right way to do it? And what, in your opinion, as someone who studied it and written a book about it, you know, needs to be done still?
Well, first of all, the three names that you just mentioned are the best in the biz, you know, and there's others at that level, but, you know, those three are just amazing.
Right.
Quick answer to the, you know, where I think it's being done well. My first one would probably be Cornell. You know, the Cornell collection. Those guys really have. They've got some of the top names, the key names. They've really put their resources behind it in terms of, you know, proper collection, preservation, cataloging, and then the digitization. You know,
right.
Making it community and you know, globally accessible. So I think that's the gold standard. And in fact, just yesterday I got a message from some folks got research funding in Utrecht, Netherlands, and they're coming over to the U.S. to look at hip hop archives and stuff. And I said, hit Ithaca, go to Cornell thing, you know, and talk to Ben and Catherine.
Right, Catherine Regan. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, one of the things about the book that I really enjoyed is that, you know, we saw people, you know, at the level of collection and not quite, you know, not what we call an archive, you know, stuff it's in the closet, it's in the basement, it's in the attic, it's in the garage, not particularly well preserved, but they understand the hip hop value of it, just not quite sure what to do with it. Right. But the way, you know, I'm thinking about former Soviet Germany, the GDR, and these b-boys who get online and or occasionally get together, and they just, you know, bring together their artifacts for reminiscence and recollection, like a reunion, you know. And they aren't sure what quite to do with it, where to commit it in terms of an archival, you know, acquisition process or something. Right. But they're absolutely aware of the value of it. And so that process of how does something go from what they call an unofficial, informal collection into something that's formally archival, and that transition from objects and just stuff I have from
Right.
and how does it get translated into, now we call it an artifact, and now it goes into a whole other system of preservation.
Right.
And then the kind of a collision, sometimes it's it's collaborative, but it's also got a collision and antagonistic aspect. Hip hop cats who they aren't really coming at things with an institutional, formal, like archival or library type of sensibility. And then the library folks say, like, we don't really know hip hop. We don't really understand what's going on. Why are these people fighting about whose name will be on the top of the bill? It's like, but that's hip hop, But so there's a mutual educational and informational kind of, socialization and conditioning that has to go on. We're seeing that everywhere we look, but it's what we hope for, and I think I hope we achieve with the book, is that there will be this kind of collective learning that archivists will understand hip hop and what it means to collect and preserve hip hop material, as hip hop heads sort of understand that there are these infrastructural and institutional things that also you need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, definitely a two-way kind of mutual learning from the legacy institutions and the folks who could connect with them. But this is all part of the educational stuff. Go ahead.
Do you see Andrew Wang's comment? How do I feel that?
I was just about to call that up. What do you mean, man? What's going on here? Go ahead.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks for that question, man. I think they did a pretty damn good job. When we talk about an institution with resources, they have it, right? And I think in terms of their African American history and Africana kind of emphasis, they understand a lot of the cultural sensitivities and what needs to be done, what's been done wrong in the past institutionally.
Right.
And they've got some really committed folks on the ground in there. I'm thinking about Timothy Ann, forgetting her last name. God.
Yeah, I know Timothy Ann. That's all I can think of as well. Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah,
but she's
great job. Yeah,
she's been great up in there, and fostering relationships way before you get to the idea of like can we have your stuff and put it on display or whatever, right? With Jay Dilla's mom and
right.
You meet people like Bambaataa and kind of massaging. I'm not going to say the egos, but massaging kind of the reputations of these cats to sort of say like, we're kind of great in the culture. Are we going to be recognized as great in your institution? It's not just being great, but they want this to be really important within the larger institution. Yeah. And I think the Smithsonian understands that.
It's assuaging those fears, I think, like you talked about. It's, saying, hey, we don't know you. Yeah. We don't know you, institution. We don't know, we might even know the Universal Hip Hop Museum, but knowing that there were 3 other hip hop museums or Hall of Fames that came and went, who might have reached out to me also, and they're gone. And, we don't know you. We don't know what this is about. And I think that it's a super, like you said, relationships is the most important starting block.
Absolutely. And then, the other thing is like, when you get into the larger institutions, like, damn, we've been burned before, man.
Right.
We don't have to dig too deep to see all the kind of wrongs that have been done and all the ripoffs that have gone on. And that's where I think, this idea, like somebody like Martha Diaz is absolutely crucial and key. And Ben at Cornell and, lots of people, certainly as you get into the smaller, more localized places, people do have a lot more kind of involvement in the local culture. So it's not quite the same thing, but the large institutions like Ivy League universities or Smithsonian scale things, it's like, making sure that you have people who are community responsive and plugged in, and that they give the resource to those people to go and spend time in the community and hang out and get a sense of what's going on and what the values are and what it might mean to bring something from hip hop from the local scene or the wider scene into a place like this.
Yeah.
My collaborator and brother, Mark Campbell in Toronto, he tries as much as possible. First of all, he doesn't have the space or his own resources for it to keep material artifacts. So what he does is he scans and copies and photographs and everything he can and lets the artifacts remain in the hands of the folks who bring them to him.
Right.
So he says, I'm not taking anything.
Right.
What I'm doing.
Wait, I thought that's what we do. We're supposed to steal the artifacts from the people and put them in the museums. And isn't that how it works? I don't know. That's
far too often. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is how it works. And then,
you're flipping this whole idea on its head. Yeah.
But this is the thing is we talk about the decolonial archive, right?
Yep.
It's like we are not going to play that fucking game again. And if anything, hip hop has always been kind of, standing firm against that sort of thing. So this is another opportunity to define hip hop according to the culture's own terms,
Yeah.
Just in a new environmental setting called the archive.
That's right. That's brilliant. Yep, indeed. So, okay, we're coming up on time. Murray, I could talk to you for days on end. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's long overdue, but I said I wanted to make it look pretty first. Come look how good looking we are. We can't just waste it on the audio format. What are we doing? We have jewelry. We got hair. What the hell? We got to show it off. So I do appreciate you coming through and hanging out with me for this. Those are two of the projects. Those two books. Again, we could talk about them for ad nauseum. What else do you have under your belt that you want folks to know about? What might you be working on that you want to share with the folks that I haven't had a chance to bring up myself tonight?
Yeah, as I've been working on these, in a way, my core project, it's called Old in the Game: Time, Age, and Aging in Hip Hop. And I'm getting old in the game just working on it. It's been way too long. But in a way, just because as the culture ages, more and more kind of information, data, research comes out, and I'm kind of reluctant to let it go. But I'm working on that. I've got that proposal out right now with a university press. I'm hoping that will see the light of day maybe within the next year. And if it doesn't, I'll just keep trying. That's my major kind of project right now and it goes along with with the archive thing, like older folks who have these materials who are suddenly thinking, what do I do? Looking at mortality and saying, what do I do with these materials that might be of value to the culture when I'm gone?
Yeah. I'm
looking at these issues. And other than that, Chuck D told me one time at a certain point in his career and his age, he said, I'm in service to hip hop.
Right.
And that's kind of all he is, and I think he's proven that over and over and over. I'm not Chuck D by any stretch, but I take that message to heart. And it's what I try to do is to be in service, to help younger folks and to bring information, knowledge, to build the culture.
Yeah.
And so with that, y'all can find me at Northeastern University, m.forman at northeastern.edu. And if anybody wants to reach out for any reason, I reply.
Yeah, you definitely do. I think that is super valuable, what you're working on as sort of being older and having this show and trying to not just, interview the folks doing the work, but, impress upon an aging hip hop oriented population. What can we do to help? Right? We don't know what to do. And we don't know the music. We don't sit with our cassette tapes. We don't burn the CDs. We don't, ride around with some of us still ride around with our cars in the booming systems. I'll tell you that much. That's never going to stop. You know what I mean? But, what can we do? And I think that we think that because we're not always attached to the music, to the way we were, that we don't have agency anymore. And I think that frustrates us, that gives us, a bad feeling because it's so much part of our lives. But when you talk about what can we do? Well, first of all, what are you doing for a living? Because you can probably incorporate hip hop into your line of work somehow. To think that if you work at a school or a library or any kind of legacy institution, this whole conversation was about what you could bring to the administrators or what you could bring to the table. If you not only that, if you have children, if you're able to, work with them, get a better relationship with your children. We've talked about this with a bunch of folks. Hip hop is the conduit, the never ending conduit that you can find common ground with your children and have a better relationship with them. And we've given examples on this show so often. And I will say that by doing that, by having this, kind of mindset, it helps someone like me do what I can do. This is the skill set that I have. And I'm not rapping and DJing. Well, I'm still DJing every now and then, but I'm not rapping. I'm not making beats. I'm not making remixes. I'm not trying to be the artist anymore. But I still have this, and I do podcasts where we incorporate music into it. I'm so satisfied that I can still use my hip hop to make something valuable in the world and not be daunted by the fact that, I don't know who half of the artists are anymore. But also, find out who the artists are. Pay attention. I turned on the TV and I watched Vivo videos, and I'm like, I don't like this song. I don't like this song. And then I'm like, oh, I actually like this song. And I don't know who this person, like that discovery, we can still do it. We can still have a Spotify playlist that gives us something new. And
Rap caviar, man. It's like I'm hitting my old ass is hitting the treadmill in the gym and listening to rap caviar. It's like you. I don't know who I'm listening to, but it's it's bumping.
Right. If I like it, I like it. And then now my algorithm says, oh, you like this kind of, and now I got JID flipping on my, or, somebody like that where I can say, okay, I can mess with this kind of deal. So I think that is really, I guess you're kind of, as you've done so many times in your career, like really putting a nice bow on some of the things we're trying to say and do when it comes to the culture, teach people about it in a serious manner, or in this case, teach older folks how we can continue to contribute to the culture and build it, not necessarily in the closed-minded way that I think some of us think we have to, like shut it down, ban this, censor that. It's like, yeah, I mean, we can have those conversations and they're important because we can talk about the destructive nature of the music and the lyrics and the corporate control. And that's what those conversations have to be had. And we have them, although we have the debates all the time, but it can't stop there. It has to say, okay, what can we also do? What's the kind of stuff that you're talking about? I think that's super valuable.
Well, hip hop has opened up so many conversations like outside of hip hop, right?
Right.
How we talk about gender, how we talk about class, how we talk about race, right?
Yep.
Those conversations aren't about hip hop, but hip hop has opened the door onto new ways of discussing them in really important and essential ways. And that's way back in the day, like going back 40 years or 45 years, that was kind of what drew me into the culture in the first place.
Right. And ain't nothing like it, man. Ain't nothing like hip hop, man. And I really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. I just want to say for the record one time, if anyone watching, hearing, listening, smelling, tasting, feeling me, likes what I'm doing, appreciates what I'm doing, it is in no small part to this man right here. You've reached out to me when I was writing for Birthplace magazine, a small, I don't say small, but pretty small New York-based online publication that I started. I met you somewhere and I knew who you were and you knew who I was. And you're like, yeah, I read this piece about the classic radio, da-da-da. And you pulled out one of these pieces that I wrote with all of my heart and soul and brilliance because I thought it was brilliant. And you told me about it. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, the guy who, put together this is paying attention to what I do. And it meant a great deal to me as just some guy, just, how we say, thinking he's pissing into the ocean to warm it up. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm yelling into the wind or, anyone's paying attention. And you were one of the, great names and great folk doing this work that did let me know that. And that's so I kept going in part because of that. So thank you.
Keep yelling, bro.
Yeah, man. Murray, thank you so much. We'll talk again soon, my friend.
All right. Thanks so much, Manny. Peace, y'all. And folks who dropped in, respect. Thank you.
Yeah, word up. You got a lot of fans in here. Watch the playback. Okay, I didn't want to mess us up by playing all the comments, but they're out there. You already know. All right, my man. Be safe. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right. Peace. There it is. One time, I'll do one of these for my man right there. There we go. Murray Forman, the great Dr. Murray Forman. Again, author, educator, cool cat, and does all the things. So once again, you can check out Murray Forman at Northeastern University. Northeastern. I knew that, of course. Jeez, God, it's really hard doing these shows.
Manny Faces. You sick for this one. Sick for this one. Sick for this.